Hello and welcome to another video. So today's a little bit different. We're not actually doing a deck profile today of any sort, at least. But we are going to be kind of going over my opinions of the game, where it's at after this first week, now that we're basically a week into the game's life cycle. And we're about 3 weeks out from that first expansion drop. So there's a few things that I've noticed, a few things that I want to go over, and some of the controversy surrounding the game, of course, which is kind of unavoidable at this point. So overall, really enjoying the game. I did drop about $130 on the game total, USD, to cover nearly every card. This has basically completed my compendium. I have at least one of every card. I have playsets of almost every card. There are a handful of legendaries like Olivia, some of the Orcust, and it's just a handful of others that I'm missing 1 to 2 of. But that's not too bad, honestly. We've also covered over half of the premium cards as well. Luck was pretty good on that front, so not too bad as far as what I got for my money. The battle pass value in this game isn't actually too bad either, overall. This is like some of the first things I want to look at. The battle pass system, pretty solid, taken from the previous game. Actually not bad value for what you get out of it. It's pretty okay. Not too upset by that. The events that are currently running, the Rupees Galore event, which ends this weekend, and the login event stuff as well that you can kind of go through, the bingo sheet and that. They were pretty good early sources of both packs and rupees, so that was nice. The mechanics of the game function really well. I do feel like 8-drop Evos are extremely strong, especially on the legendary front. You have things like Orcus and Gyaru that are just kind of massive swarms. Cerberus is also very good, although it is in a class like Abyss that isn't super solid right now. We'll look into that a little bit more in a minute, as that is probably one of the few gripes I have with the class system so far. But overall, I feel like the game is in a solid spot for balancing. There are a lot of varieties of decks that we're seeing at the moment through both Dragon, Sword, Haven, Rune, Portal. Like 5 crafts are all decently viable, with a couple outstanding ones in both Sword and Portal, and then everything else like Rune, Haven, and Forest and that kind of sitting in kind of a middle zone, but also performing extremely well. You can honestly climb and do well with any of those decks and be fine. The card pool overall isn't too bad. We've got a pretty solid amount of cards, and the variety is there. I do wish we had stuff for like Earthright. We don't have any big cards for that yet. Hopefully that'll come with that first expansion, and that'll make a nice thing. The story mode, while I have kind of glossed over and played through it, is pretty solid, it seems like. Seems like it's going to be interesting enough. The practice tutorial stuff wasn't too bad. You do get a little bit of rupees for it. I've been through and finished all of those. It's not the greatest amount, and it's probably leading us into what the biggest problem with the game at this stage is, and that's going to be card pool. So the card pool, while being good, is really hard to get all of without spending money. The free-to-play side of it, you can definitely do alright. You can get up to 1 to 2 decks running on very minimal cost, I would say. You can probably get 1 deck nearly guaranteed, whether it be a budget variant of Portal or Forest, and do alright with those. Or if you get lucky and hit all the legends in a certain craft, you can probably do quite well with that as well. But the rupee situation, 500 for a pack, oh, doesn't feel good. Looking at the ratio of how many rupees we're earning versus what a pack costs currently, it seems to work out to be roughly the same as OG Shadowverse before the free-to-play changes. So OG Shadowverse, in its infancy, that first year, really went through a struggle that this game may end up facing as well, where you aren't going to earn enough rupees as a free-to-play player to get enough cards from each set. It'll be really difficult and a pain to do without spending any money at all. And that was something Shadowverse 1 ended up solving eventually, by 1, running more events, 2, having decent ways to kind of earn more stuff through like Open 6 and Arena, which hopefully we will get soon-ish. I mean, we're going to have at least the weekend tournament. We'll see how that goes coming up. But the Battle Pass wasn't introduced too much later. Mini expansions weren't introduced too much later. Rotation wasn't introduced too much later in original Shadowverse. And a lot of those helped solve some of the problems that free-to-play was having. Because I remember early Shadowverse, I played nearly all free-to-play very early Shadowverse, and it was brutal. Having enough cards to make enough decks was a problem, even for a day 1 player. I played super early in that, and this is looking like it's having similar issues so far. We're hoping that can be kind of solved, but it's definitely being exacerbated by the fact that liquefaction is locked behind having 3 of each card, and that is probably my biggest problem. The rupee stuff is actually basically similar to original Shadowverse and isn't too hard to sort out by events and other ways to earn rupees long term. But that vial system, not allowing people to uncraft things that they don't want, to then craft things that they do want, until you have at least 3 copies of a card, whether that be premium or normal copies, you need at least 3 total, is hell. You just can't do anything. There'll be times if you hit 1 legendary from each craft as a free-to-play player and you don't get anything else, you're kind of screwed, because you can't uncraft those. You're basically stuck waiting, and you can only craft one or two really budget decks anyway out of that. Forest being the easiest one, because you don't even need legendaries to run a budget Forest deck. But being, honestly, in my opinion, not one of the funnest decks to play. I'm not a big Forest enjoyer, but other people are, and I'm sure they're happy with that. But it's definitely going to be a long-term problem if it isn't addressed, and Cygame's record for addressing these kind of problems isn't exactly the best, unfortunately. Cygames will see the numbers, and this game is doing crazy numbers. It has really good concurrent players. I'm sure there are a lot of people like myself who have spent money on the game and are still enjoying it, because if you spend that little bit, I think if you could get past that, I don't know, 40 USD thing, you could probably easily get at least 1 or more deck on top of the free-to-play deck that you can kind of work from, and probably even get closer to 3 decks even, honestly, at that point. It'd be harder, but doable, I imagine. But spending that barrier to entry in a free-to-play game can be really rough, and it's not something you expect people to want to have to do. I will say, I think this game is still more free-to-play friendly than Hearthstone kind of is. Hearthstone, I think, is still pretty brutal. It's better than it used to be, but I think that's still pretty bad. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel's free-to-play isn't completely bad, but it's another one of those games where you can only really run 1 or 2 decks as a free-to-play, especially if you're starting fresh, because it's brutal early on. And this game obviously still has that same sort of problem. The group system. This is a completely different topic. We've basically moved past that. There's not much more to say about the liquefaction and the economy side of it. Pretty much covered it. That's really it. I don't want to go too deep in the weeds of it, because it's just, you just end up in a cycle of, it's just negativity. It's not worth it at that point. But hopefully they address it. That's the final outcome of that side. But the group system, I'm not a huge fan of. Not at all. I think group matchmaking being visible the way it is just doesn't feel great. I do find myself bouncing quite heavily between Topaz and Sapphire pretty easily, just because of the random decks I want to play. It feels like you're heavily punished for wanting to play something different that you're not used to, or more meme orientated, and that is then visually represented in the group system. So you feel a little bad when your group drops heavily because you're trying to play something that's off meta or different and out of the way of normal gameplay. I get it from a behind the scenes perspective, because groups actually function really well in that regard. It means if you do go on heavy loss streaks, you do get dropped into a lower matchmaking pool with less skilled players typically. Although I do feel like that isn't super relevant right now, as decks are super limited and linear, and you don't have as big a gap between the skill level of, say, a Topaz player and a Sapphire player at current. Especially between Topaz and Ruby, though those players seem pretty similar regardless. You might get a couple of misplays, but overall, very, very similar. I haven't played into Diamond yet, because I just haven't grinded a single deck and got there. Probably could do it pretty easily if I just played a single good deck like Portal or Dragon at this stage and just only played that. But I feel like the odds of dropping back out of that are really high, and I don't have any drive to get there. It does seem like, obviously, which I think this was meant to be the case originally anyway, groups are your main matchmaking pool. It does seem to prioritize putting you with someone in your same group over someone in your same rank. Although that's not to say rank is not important here. Rank still seems to determine who you go up against as a secondary factor. So if I'm in Topaz group, I'm more likely to fight people in A Topaz group or high B Topaz group than I am to fight someone from like D Topaz group. I rarely see a player in that kind of rank. That's not to say you won't ever. I guess there are outliers. But the same goes for Sapphire rank. If you're in Sapphire rank D, you're going to see other people who are in Sapphire rank D, or potentially a rank higher than you in Sapphire. Like, you're not going to go too far out of your rank range, because it's still taken into account when they're trying to build a matchup. But yeah, that's a lot of the main things about this game. Now, Shadowverse Park, I think, is great. I actually really like Shadowverse Park. I think they've done a really nice job here with the social aspect. The messaging system for guild stuff is really cool. I do wish guilds were a little larger. I wish, like, 30 seems like a pretty rough little cap here. And I'm sure we'll get to see a lot more event stuff done in here. It'll be interesting to see how the weekend tournament goes, since this will be the first one. And I will have coverage for that. I'm going to have a video going over some good deck options. Oh, Cerberus leader person. Anyway, there are going to be some interesting stuff coming up for that, hopefully. This initial event was really cool too. Release celebration. Having people play in lobby matches in here was really nice. And overall, I think Shadowverse Park is a nice addition. Do I think it was 100% necessary? No, not 100%, but I think the social aspect being a thing is really nice, because it was something Shadowverse was kind of missing, and what most TCGs are missing. A nice social aspect to the game where you can kind of have fun and enjoy it. But overall, I don't have too many problems with it. The economy is a big one, and hopefully that does get changed in some regard, whether it be the Vial system or the Rupee system gets overhauled a little bit, or events are just way more common and earning rupees is way easier, so that people can potentially branch out and build more. But at its core, that is the primary monetization of a card game, is opening packs, and I'm sure they don't want to hurt that too bad, especially when they're probably doing fairly well financially off this so far. I assume this game is doing pretty well overall. But it is sad to see some news articles like Dexerto really over-exaggerating the problem. That is kind of annoying, because it's like, yes, there is a problem. The problem does need addressing. But, come on. You don't need to go too over the top here. So, this is a little bit of a different video. I haven't really done many videos like this, where I just kind of give my thoughts on a game. I give my thoughts on its economy and where it's at and things like that. I used to cover a little bit of news, but not quite to this kind of stuff. But overall, again, love the game. The actual game itself is great. Hopefully the economy stuff can be sorted so we don't lose too many early players, because the worst thing that can happen is a Phantasy Star Online New Genesis situation where the initial monetization is really rough and players just don't really stick around. And that brutalizes your community. So I am really hoping they do something, it gets sorted, and we can have a lot of fun with the game, because I am having fun. And I will continue to play this game for years to come at this point. If it's another 9 years, so be it. If they can keep the balancing well and the game doesn't overdo it, I'll be pretty happy. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this style of video. Maybe we'll do some more of these. Maybe we won't. Oh, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how things go. I'll probably do an update if they do obviously fix the economy or something. You know, we'll have kind of a praise session. We'll see what they do. Go over it all. But until next time, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you then.